Erica had been dancing alone in the marble hall for maybe 90 seconds when she felt it, that palpable shift in the atmosphere that meant she wasn't alone anymore. She kept dancing anyway. After 4 years of making herself invisible, being noticed felt dangerously intoxicating. What she didn't know was that the man watching her from the corridor already knew exactly who she was, and he'd been searching for her for a very long time. The Russo estate occupied 12 acres in Rome's most exclusive district, tucked behind ancient walls and modern security systems. The kind of property that housed old families, new power, and people who understood that true wealth whispered rather than shouted. Erica McNeill couldn't normally afford to stand in a place like this, let alone work here. But 7 months ago, Maria had gotten her the janitor position after Erica's fourth rejection from yet another tech company that wouldn't return her calls. That had been 214 days ago. Now she stood in the grand marble hall at 11:52 p.m., surveying the aftermath of tonight's private reception. Crystal tumblers abandoned on antique side tables. Linen napkins discarded near the service entrance. The lingering scent of expensive cigars and power so deeply rooted it didn't need validation. Her reflection caught in the towering windows. Black woman in her late 20s. Natural hair pulled back in a tight, regulation bun. Wearing the estate's standard uniform. Black dress, white apron, white collar, practical shoes. The dress code was designed to make staff disappear into the background. And for 7 months, Erica had perfected the art of erasure. Her phone buzzed. Maria again. The 6th time this month her former colleague had canceled lunch, too busy, too uncomfortable, promising to reschedule soon. The 6th time Erica had felt the sharp edge of being the friend who was always gracious, always accommodating, always saying no worries, when everything inside her was screaming. She was exhausted. Exhausted from being unseen. Exhausted from being gracious. Exhausted from pretending that mopping marble floors in a palazzo was somehow acceptable when she'd once been the woman who could trace digital fingerprints through the darkest corners of the internet. Erica pulled out her earbuds, connected them to her phone, scrolled to the playlist she hadn't opened in 4 years. The one labeled Before the Collapse. The music started. Something with a bass line that made her body respond before her mind could protest. Something that reminded her of nights when she'd been Erica McNeill, cybersecurity specialist, the woman who could crack any system, who'd been called a prodigy, who'd had a brilliant future. She started wiping down the tables, but her muscles were already responding to the rhythm. A sway, then another. Her shoulders rolled, her hips followed. The glass in her hand became part of the choreography as she set it on her cart. And then she forgot about the cart entirely. Erica McNeill, invisible janitor, professional ghost, woman who'd spent 4 years making herself smaller, began to dance. Not the kind of dancing performed for an audience. The kind you do alone when you think the world has forgotten you exist. When your body remembers what it felt like to be powerful, to be confident, to occupy space without apologizing for breathing. Her eyes closed. The hall disappeared. The uniform didn't matter. The crystal glasses and marble surfaces and borrowed elegance all dissolved into irrelevance. There was only the music, only the movement, only her body remembering how to feel alive. She turned slowly, her arms rising, her head tilting back. The chandelier light caught the gold fixtures above, throwing warm amber across her brown skin. Her hips moved in ways the starched uniform was never designed to accommodate, fluid, sensual, unconsciously commanding. The tight bun she'd pinned was loosening, wisps of hair framing her face in a way that made her look younger, less guarded, more like the woman she used to be. For 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, Erica forgot to be invisible. And then she felt it, that electric shift in the air, the weight of attention. The sensation of being watched that makes your skin prickle with acute awareness. She should stop. Should snap back to professional Erica, the janitor who keeps her head down and completes her tasks and never, ever draws attention to herself. Instead, she kept dancing. Because after 4 years of making herself invisible, being seen felt dangerously good. In the corridor, Merico Russo stopped breathing. He descended the stairs at 11:50 to review security footage before his midnight conference call with his contacts in Milan. His chronic insomnia meant late nights were his most productive hours. He wasn't expecting her. The new janitor, the one he'd barely registered in the 7 months she'd been on staff. Maria had hired her. Something about an old university friend who desperately needed work. He'd approved without paying attention because he trusted Maria's instincts, and he had far more pressing concerns than domestic personnel. But now she was moving through his hall like she commanded it, like the marble floors belonged to her, like the chandeliers existed solely to illuminate her private performance. Her eyes were closed, her lips slightly parted, her body moving with a confidence that had absolutely nothing to do with cleaning glassware. The uniform should have made it ordinary. Instead, it made it devastating. The contrast between the practical dress and the way her body moved beneath it. Every curve, every roll of her hips, every graceful extension of her arms. Merico's hands flexed at his sides. He built an empire on control, on reading people, on maintaining ruthless distance between desire and action. But watching her dance, this woman who was supposed to be invisible, who'd spent 7 months avoiding direct eye contact during staff briefings, he felt control dissolving like smoke. For 2 minutes, he stood motionless in the corridor entrance, watching with the kind of hunger that made rational thought impossible. The kind that made his pulse accelerate and his mind venture somewhere dark and possessive and entirely inappropriate for an employer observing an employee. Then she turned. The chandelier light caught her face fully. High cheekbones, full lips, skin like polished walnut, eyes still closed, lost in whatever music played through her earbuds. And Merico's entire world shifted on its axis. Because he knew that face. Not from staff meetings or household schedules, or the forgettable blur of domestic employees who kept his estate functioning seamlessly. He knew it from international news coverage, from a scandal he'd followed with obsessive interest 4 years ago, from the woman who'd captivated him then, brilliant, courageous, self-destructive in her commitment to integrity. Erica McNeill, the cybersecurity analyst who testified against TechCore Industries in the massive data breach case, who'd send executives to federal prison, who'd destroy her own career to expose corporate crime with ties to organized syndicates, who'd vanished from public view after the trial concluded and the media circus moved on to fresh scandals. She'd been here, in his house, invisible, for 7 months. The desire didn't disappear with recognition. It intensified, because now he understood. She wasn't just beautiful. She was brilliant. She wasn't just graceful. She was dangerous. And he'd been searching for her for 4 years. Merico turned to his associate standing silently behind him, his voice low and absolute. "Bring her to me." Before we dive deeper into this story, take a moment to hit that like button if you love suspenseful, emotional stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next thrilling chapter. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Whether it's your city, your country, or even just your favorite spot to watch these stories, we love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's get back to the story and see just how far courage can take someone when danger is closing in. Chapter 1: The Summons. Erica's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. A single text from an unknown internal extension, Mr. Russo's office. 7:30 a.m. Do not be late. Her stomach dropped. In 7 months of working at the estate, she'd never been summoned to the private wing. Staff didn't go to the private wing unless something had gone catastrophically wrong, or they were being let go. She knew which one this was. Someone had seen her last night, dancing like an idiot in the marble hall when she should have been working, making a spectacle of herself, drawing exactly the kind of attention she'd spent 4 years learning to avoid. Erica sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the staff quarters, hands shaking as she pulled her hair back into the regulation bun. The face in the mirror looked terrified. Good. She should be terrified. She'd just lost the only job she could get, the only income keeping her from complete destitution. Maria would be disappointed. Another favor wasted on Erica's inability to just keep her head down and survive. At 7:29, she stood outside the carved double doors of Merico Russo's office, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. She smoothed down her uniform one more time, took a breath that did nothing to calm her nerves, and knocked. Enter. His voice was deep, accented, absolute. The kind of voice that didn't repeat itself. Erica pushed open the door and stepped into a room that looked like it belonged in a Renaissance painting. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Leather furniture that probably cost more than her entire education. Windows overlooking Rome's terracotta rooftops, the morning sun turning everything gold. And behind a massive mahogany desk sat Merico Russo. He looked different up close. More dangerous. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, no jacket. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his beard shadow-sharp and deliberate. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Dark, intense, focused on her with an attention that made her feel simultaneously exposed and paralyzed. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Erica sat, her hands clasped in her lap, her spine rigid, every instinct screaming at her to make herself smaller, less noticeable, forgettable. I apologize for last night, she began, her voice steadier than she expected. I was unprofessional. It won't happen again. If you're letting me go, I understand. I just need 2 weeks to find. I'm not firing you, Miss McNeill. Her mouth snapped shut. The way he said her name, her real name, made ice flood her veins. Merico leaned back in his chair, studying her with a kind of focus that suggested he saw everything she was trying to hide. Or should I say, Miss Maxwell? Though I suppose you've been using your mother's maiden name for the past 4 years. Smart. Simple identity changes are often the most effective. Erica's mind raced, calculating exits, consequences, dangers. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult both of us. His tone wasn't angry. It was matter-of-fact, almost gentle. Erica Maxwell, former cybersecurity analyst at TechCore Industries. You discovered a massive data breach being orchestrated by your own executives, breach that was being sold to organized crime syndicates for targeted blackmail and extortion. You reported it internally. They buried it. So you went to federal authorities with 400 gigabytes of evidence you'd compiled over 6 months. Her throat closed. No one was supposed to know. She'd disappeared. Changed her name. Become invisible. Your testimony sent 3 executives to federal prison. Merico continued, his voice quiet but relentless. It dismantled a criminal network operating in 7 countries. It also destroyed your career, got you blacklisted from every tech company in the Western Hemisphere, and painted a target on your back from people who don't forgive that kind of betrayal. Why are you telling me this? Erica's voice came out as a whisper. Because I've been looking for you for 4 years. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications she didn't want to consider. Merico stood, moving around the desk with the controlled grace of a predator. He didn't come close enough to threaten, but close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I followed your case obsessively, Miss McNeill. Not because of the corporate fraud, though that was fascinating. Because of you. The way your mind works. The way you tracked digital evidence through shell corporations and encrypted servers that federal investigators couldn't penetrate. The way you risked everything, your career, your safety, your entire future because you believed in doing the right thing. That was stupid, Erica said bitterly. Look where it got me. It got you here. Merico's eyes held hers. In front of me. And I have a proposition. I'm not interested in propositions from men who've been looking for me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not that kind of proposition. Though we'll discuss my personal interest in you later. Right now, I'm talking about a job. Erica blinked.
A job.
I run several businesses, Miss McNeill. Some entirely legitimate. Some that operate in what we might call gray zones. All of them occasionally require someone with your very specific skill set. Someone who can trace digital footprints, recover stolen assets, identify fraud that traditional authorities are too slow or too compromised to address. You want me to be your personal hacker. I want you to be my digital forensics specialist. Paid position. 50,000 euros to start, renegotiable based on results. You would work exclusively on cases I assign. You would have access to resources and technology you haven't touched in 4 years. And you would have my protection, which in your situation is worth more than the salary. Erica's mind spun. This had to be a trap. Had to be. Why would you offer me this? Because you're wasting your brilliance mopping floors. Because I need someone I can trust to operate with integrity in situations where integrity is rare. And because I watched you dance last night like you were remembering what it felt like to be alive, and I realized you've been in hiding long enough. She stared at him, searching for the angle, the threat, the inevitable betrayal. But all she saw was absolute certainty. A man who'd already decided and was simply waiting for her to catch up. This is insane, she whispered. Yes, Merico agreed. But you're going to say yes anyway. Because you're brilliant, Miss McNeill. And brilliant people don't survive by mopping floors. They survive by doing what they were meant to do. Erica's hands trembled in her lap. 4 years of hiding. 4 years of being invisible. 4 years of pretending she didn't miss the work, the challenge, the feeling of her mind operating at full capacity. One case, she heard herself say. I'll consult on one case. Then I decide. Merico's smile was slow, satisfied, dangerous. One case, Miss McNeill. That's all I need. He extended his hand. After a long moment, Erica stood and shook it. His grip was warm, firm, possessive in a way that made her pulse spike. Welcome back to the world, Merico said quietly. I promise you won't regret this. But as Erica left his office, her mind already racing with questions and calculations and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of purpose, she couldn't shake one thought. She already knew she would regret this. The only question was whether it would be worth it. Erica should have left the office. Should have walked out with the fragile sense of victory still intact, the handshake still warm on her palm, the promise of one case and nothing more. Instead, she turned back at the doorway. What did you mean earlier? About your personal interest. Merico had returned to his desk, but he looked up at her question, and something shifted in his expression. Something that made the air in the room feel suddenly thinner. Close the door, Miss McNeill. It wasn't a request. Erica's hand hesitated on the handle. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 4 years screamed at her to leave it open, maintain the exit, keep the boundary clear. But she'd already shaken his hand. Already agreed to one case. Already stepped back into a world where she'd sworn she'd never go. She closed the door. The click of the latch seemed impossibly loud. Merico stood again, but this time he didn't maintain the professional distance. He moved closer, stopping just inside what any HR manual would call appropriate space, but what every nerve in Erica's body registered as dangerous proximity. "I'm going to be very direct with you," he said quietly, "because I don't believe in pretending, and I don't think you do either. Not really. Not when it matters." Erica's pulse hammered. "I'm listening. I watched you dance last night, and my first thought wasn't about your past or your skills or how useful you might be to my operations." His dark eyes held hers, unflinching. "My first thought was that you were the most captivating woman I'd ever seen. And I wanted you." The words landed like a physical touch. Heat flooded Erica's face, her chest, places she'd trained herself not to acknowledge for 4 years. "That's inappropriate," she managed. "Yes," Merico agreed calmly. "It is. Which is why I'm telling you now, before we begin working together. I want you to understand exactly what you're walking into. A hostile work environment? An honest one." He didn't smile, didn't soften it with charm or deflection. "I'm attracted to you, Miss McNeill. Intensely. And that attraction isn't going to disappear because we establish professional boundaries. But I'm also not the kind of man who uses power to coerce. So, I'm giving you the information. What you do with it is your choice." Erica's mind raced, trying to find solid ground in a conversation that felt like quicksand. "You're my employer. There's already a power imbalance." "There is," he acknowledged, "which is why I'm making this very clear. Your employment is not conditional on reciprocating my interest. You work for me, you get paid, and whether you ever want anything more is entirely your decision. No consequences either way." "People don't actually work like that." "I do." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "But I also won't lie to you and pretend I'm offering you this job purely out of professional respect. I want you in my life, Erica. I wanted you 4 years ago when I watched you testify on a screen, and I want you now that you're standing in front of me. The job is real. The attraction is real. Both can be true." The way he said her first name made her stomach twist with something she absolutely could not afford to feel. "This is insane." "You said that already." Now he did smile, slight and devastating. "You're still here." Because she was. Because despite every logical reason to walk away, despite the power imbalance and the danger and the complete insanity of a mafia boss propositioning his janitor turned forensic specialist, she was still standing in his office, heart racing, body responding in ways that terrified her. "I can't afford complications," Erica said, hating how her voice shook. "I spent 4 years hiding because I made myself a target. I can't do this." "Then we keep it professional." Merico's tone shifted, becoming gentle in a way that somehow made it worse. "One case, like you said. You prove to yourself that you can still do the work. I prove that I can be trusted to keep boundaries. And we both pretend we don't feel whatever this is between us. There's nothing between us. There will be." It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. The kind that made her believe him despite every defense she'd built. "Maybe not today. Maybe not for months. But eventually, Erica, you're going to stop running from everything that makes you feel alive. You don't know me. I know you danced alone in my ballroom, like you were reclaiming yourself. I know you risked everything to expose corruption because your integrity wouldn't let you stay silent. I know you've been invisible for 4 years, and last night you remembered what it felt like to be seen." He paused, his eyes burning into hers. "And I know that terrifies you more than anything I could do to you." Erica's throat tightened, because he was right. The dancing, the visibility, the way her body had remembered freedom, It had all been terrifying and intoxicating and proof that 4 years of hiding hadn't killed the parts of her that wanted more. "I need this job," she whispered. "I need the work. I need to remember who I was before everything fell apart. But I can't. I can't be what you want. I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself." Merico's voice was impossibly gentle now. "Do the work. Remember who you are. Everything else can wait. And if I never want anything else, then you never want anything else, and we work together professionally, and I deal with my own feelings like an adult." He held her gaze. "But I won't apologize for being honest about them." The room felt too small, too warm, too charged with possibilities that Erica couldn't afford to consider. She should negotiate, should demand clear boundaries, should protect herself from the inevitable moment when this all collapsed. Instead, she heard herself say, "One case." "One case," Merico agreed. "And you keep your distance. Professionally. Completely. During work hours, I'll be nothing but professional." "That's not what I asked. It's what I'm offering." His smile was slow, dangerous, honest. "I won't lie to you, Erica. Not about this. I want you. But I'll wait. For however long it takes." The confidence in his voice should have been offensive, should have made her angry. Instead, it made something low in her stomach clench with heat and possibility and terror. "The case," she said abruptly, needing to redirect before she did something catastrophically stupid. "What's the case?" Merico's expression shifted back to business, though the intensity in his eyes remained. "A family in Naples. Their son's medical fund, 280,000 euros, stolen through a cryptocurrency scam. The authorities have been investigating for 3 months with no results. The family is desperate." Something clicked in Erica's chest. Purpose. The thing she'd been starving for. "Crypto is traceable if you know where to look. Which is why I need you." She should say no. Should walk away from the dangerous mafia boss who wanted her and the job that would pull her back into a world that had destroyed her once already. But standing in that office, with Merico's dark eyes watching her like she was something precious and powerful instead of broken and hiding, Erica felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. She felt necessary. "One case," she said again, as much to convince herself as him. "That's all." Merico's smile was knowing, satisfied, certain. "One case, Erica. I'll have the files sent to your quarters within the hour." Erica turned and walked out before she could change her mind, before she could acknowledge the heat still flooding her body, before she could admit that when he'd said he'd wait, part of her had already started counting down the time until she stopped running. The door closed behind her, and she leaned against the corridor wall, hands shaking, heart racing. One case. She could survive one case. She just wasn't sure she could survive the way Merico Russo looked at her like he already knew how this would end. The Fontana family arrived at the estate at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, and Erica knew immediately why Merico had chosen them as her first case. They were in their 70s, Antonio and Lucia Fontana, holding hands as they sat in the conference room like they were afraid to let go of each other. Lucia wore a floral dress that had been carefully pressed, probably her best outfit. Antonio's suit jacket was slightly too large, like he'd lost weight recently. The kind of weight you lose from stress, from not sleeping, from watching your entire future disappear. Erica had seen that look before. In her own mirror, 4 years ago. Merico made the introductions with a warmth that surprised her. "Antonio, Lucia, this is Miss McNeill. She's the specialist I told you about. If anyone can help you, it's her." Antonio's handshake was firm despite his age, his eyes searching Erica's face with desperate hope. "Thank you for seeing us, Signorina. We didn't know where else to turn." "Tell me what happened," Erica said gently, pulling out her laptop. Everything from the beginning. The story came out in fragments, Lucia filling in details when Antonio's voice broke. They'd owned a small restaurant in Trastevere for 43 years. It had been their life, their legacy for their grandchildren. Last year, they decided to sell and retire. A buyer had appeared, enthusiastic, professional, offering €280,000, exactly what the property was worth. But the buyer had insisted on cryptocurrency for the transaction. Said it was faster, more secure, better for international transfers. He'd seemed so knowledgeable, so trustworthy. Had even helped them set up a digital wallet, walked them through the entire process. He said the money would arrive within 24 hours, Antonio said, his weathered hands trembling. We signed the papers, transferred the property, and then he disappeared. The wallet address he gave us, it was false. The cryptocurrency went somewhere, but we don't know where. The police say there's nothing they can do. That cryptocurrency is impossible to trace. Lucia wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. That money was everything. Our retirement, our healthcare, the money we promised our daughter for her children's education. Quarantator Annie D. Lavoro. 43 years of work. Gone. Erica felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been frozen for 4 years, sealed away behind layers of self-protection and learned helplessness. She looked at Merico, who was watching her with that intense, knowing gaze. He'd known exactly what he was doing when he chose this case. Not a corporate fraud or a complex money laundering scheme. An elderly couple who'd been robbed of their entire life savings by someone who looked them in the eye and smiled while destroying them. The police are wrong, Erica said, her voice steady and sure for the first time in years. Cryptocurrency isn't impossible to trace. It's just difficult. And I'm very good at difficult. Hope flared in Antonio's eyes. You can find it. You can get our money back. I can't promise results, Erica said honestly. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to trace where that money went and who took it. I'll need every detail you remember. The buyer's name, email addresses, phone numbers, any documentation from the transaction. The wallet address he gave you. Everything. For the next hour, Erica took notes, asked questions, documented every piece of information the Fontanis could provide. When they finally left, Lucia squeezed her hand and whispered, "Grazie, signorina. Thank you for giving us hope." After they were gone, Erica sat in the conference room staring at her laptop screen, her heart pounding with something she'd almost forgotten. Not fear. Not dread. Purpose. They remind you of someone, Merico said from the doorway. It wasn't a question. They remind me of why I did what I did, Erica said quietly. 4 years ago, when I exposed TechCore, everyone focused on the corporate fraud, the millions of dollars, the executive corruption. But the real victims were people like the Fontanis. Regular people whose identities were stolen, whose lives were destroyed, while executives got rich selling their data. That's why I testified. Not for justice in some abstract sense. For them. And that's why you'll find the Fontanis money, Merico said. Because this isn't just a case to you. He was right. Erica spent the next 72 hours in a state of focused intensity she hadn't experienced since before the trial. Merico had set her up in a private office with equipment that made her want to weep. 3 monitors, processing power that could crack encryption in minutes instead of hours, access to databases and blockchain analysis tools she'd only dreamed about. She started with the wallet address the scammer had provided. It was false, as expected, but the transaction history showed the cryptocurrency had been immediately forwarded through a series of intermediate wallets. Classic laundering technique, designed to obscure the trail. But every transaction left traces. Timestamps, IP addresses, patterns in the amounts transferred. Erica followed the money through 17 different wallets across 9 countries. She cross-referenced transaction times with social media activity, looking for patterns. She analyzed the splitting and recombining techniques the scammer used, building a profile of his methodology. On the second day, she found a mistake. A tiny one. The scammer had transferred funds from one wallet to another without using a VPN, leaving his actual IP address exposed for 0.3 seconds. Most investigators would miss it. Erica didn't. She traced the IP to an apartment in Berlin, cross-referenced it with cryptocurrency exchange accounts, found a pattern of similar scams, all targeting elderly victims, all using the same sophisticated but ultimately traceable methodology. By the third day, she had everything. The scammer's real identity, his active wallet addresses, the exact location of the Fontanis' €280,000, now spread across 4 different accounts. Erica leaned back in her chair, staring at the evidence on her screens, and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years.
Victory.
Not just professional satisfaction. Something deeper. The bone-deep knowledge that her skills mattered, that her mind could still do extraordinary things, that she wasn't broken or useless or finished. She was brilliant, and she just proved it. When she presented her findings to Merico, he studied the documentation with the focus of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. "This is remarkable work, Miss McNeill. Exceptional, even by your standards." "Can you recover it?" Erica asked. "The money, I can identify where it is, but actually retrieving it, that requires resources I don't have." Merico's smile was sharp and dangerous. "I have resources. And contacts who can make cryptocurrency move in directions it doesn't want to go. Give me 48 hours. It took 36. When the Fontanis returned to the estate, Antonio was shaking so badly Lucia had to help him sit down. Merico handed him a bank statement showing €280,000 deposited in their account that morning. Antonio stared at it, disbelieving. This is our money. All of it. You found all of it." "Miss McNeill found it," Merico corrected. "I simply facilitated the recovery." Lucia was crying openly, holding the statement like it was sacred. She stood and embraced Erica, whispering rapid Italian through her tears. Thank you. God bless you. You gave us our life back." After they left, Erica stood at the window, watching their car disappear down the drive. Her reflection in the glass looked different. Stronger. More solid. More real. "How does it feel?" Merico asked, his voice low and close behind her. "Like remembering how to breathe," Erica whispered. She turned to face him and found him watching her with an expression that made heat bloom in her chest.
Pride, yes.
But something else. Something more intense, more personal, more dangerous. "One case," she said. "That was the deal." "It was," Merico agreed. "I want more." His smile was slow and absolutely triumphant. "I know you do." And in that moment, standing in Merico Russo's estate with the evidence of her capabilities spread across 3 monitors and the Fontanis gratitude still echoing in her ears, Erica McNeill made a choice. She was done hiding, done pretending, done being invisible. She was back. The text arrived at 7:15 p.m., 3 days after the Fontana case closed. Rooftop. 8 p.m. Wear something other than your uniform. Erica stared at her phone, her stomach doing something complicated. This wasn't a work summons. This was something else entirely. Something she'd been anticipating and dreading in equal measure since the moment she'd agreed to stay. She didn't own much that wasn't her uniform. But buried in the back of her closet was a simple black dress she'd packed when she first took this job, back when she'd still had some delusional hope that maybe, someday, she'd have a reason to be someone other than the invisible janitor. At 7:58, she stood at the base of the stairs leading to the estate's rooftop terrace, her heart pounding. The dress felt strange after months of uniforms, like wearing her own skin again after forgetting what it felt like. She climbed the stairs. The rooftop had been transformed. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting warm gold across the space. A small table was set for two, simple and intimate, with candles flickering in the evening breeze. Beyond the terrace railing, Rome spread out in every direction, a sea of terracotta and gold and ancient stone, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica visible in the distance. Merico stood at the railing, his back to her, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No suit jacket. No tie. He looked more human like this. More accessible. More dangerous. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the expression that crossed his face made her breath catch. Not just appreciation. Something raw. Hunger, yes. But also something that looked almost like reverence. "You're beautiful," he said simply. No qualifier, no smooth delivery. Just truth. "You said to wear something other than my uniform," Erica replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I did my best." "Your best is remarkable." He pulled out her chair, waited until she sat, then took his own seat across from her. "I thought it was time we had a conversation that wasn't about cases or contracts or professional boundaries." "What kind of conversation?" "An honest one." Dinner appeared, delivered by staff who vanished as quickly as they came. Simple food, perfectly prepared. Pasta carbonara, fresh bread, wine that probably cost more than Erica used to make in a month. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the city sounds drifting up from below, the candles casting shifting shadows across Merico's face. "Tell me about TechCore," Merico said finally. "Not the case."
You.
"What it cost you?" Erica set down her fork. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I need to understand who you are. Not the brilliant analyst. Not the whistleblower.
You."
She took a breath, then another. "It cost me everything. My career, obviously. My reputation. Most people in the industry think I'm either a traitor or a naive idealist who didn't understand how the real world works. My mentor, the man who trained me, who I thought of as a father, he looked at me in court like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. My friends stopped calling. My family stopped understanding. I became the woman who destroyed her own life for principles that nobody valued." "I value them," Merico said quietly. "You run a criminal empire. I run businesses that operate outside traditional legal structures because traditional legal structures are designed to protect the powerful and abandon the vulnerable. There's a difference." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Tell me, Erica, when you went to the authorities with your evidence, what happened?" She knew what he was asking. They took 6 months to act. 6 months while more people were victimized, more data was stolen, more lives were destroyed. And when they finally moved, they made deals. Reduced sentences, immunity for cooperation, settlements that let executives keep their wealth. Justice was slow and compromised and ultimately hollow. And the Fontanas? The police told them there was nothing they could do. That cryptocurrency fraud was impossible to prosecute. They would have lost everything if they'd relied on the system. Exactly. Merico's voice was passionate now, alive. The system fails people like the Fontanas every day. It's designed to. So people like me create alternative systems. Faster justice. Real consequences. Protection for those who can't protect themselves. At what cost? Erica challenged. How many laws do you break? How many people get hurt in your version of justice? Fewer than in the traditional version. He held her gaze. I won't pretend I'm a hero, Erica. I operate in moral gray zones. I use methods that would horrify traditional authorities, but I get results. Real results. And I protect people the system has decided aren't worth protecting. Why? The question came out softer than she intended. Why do you do this? Merico was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raw. My father was murdered when I was 19, shot in front of our home by men hired by a business partner he trusted. My father wasn't a saint. He was involved in the family business, the legitimate parts and the other parts. But he had rules. He protected the vulnerable. He refused to deal in human trafficking, in exploitation of the desperate. His partner wanted to expand into those areas. My father said no. So his partner killed him. Erica's chest tightened. I'm sorry. The police did nothing. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't care. My father was Mafia, so his death was just criminals killing criminals. The system decided he wasn't worth justice. So I took over the family business, and I made sure that what happened to my father would never happen to anyone under my protection again. I built an empire that protects people the system abandons. That's my mission. That's who I am. The candles flickered between them. The city glittered below. And Erica understood, suddenly and completely, why she was here. Why Merico had been looking for her. Why this felt inevitable. They were the same. Different methods, different paths, but the same fundamental truth. They'd both sacrificed everything for people the system had decided didn't matter. They'd both been punished for caring. And they'd both survived by creating new rules in a world where the old rules were broken. I'm terrified of you, Erica said quietly. I know. Not because you're dangerous. Because of what I feel when I'm near you. Like I could trust you. Like I could let myself be seen again. And the last time I did that, it destroyed me. Merico stood, moved around the table, crouched beside her chair, so their eyes were level. He didn't touch her, but she could feel the heat of him, the barely controlled intensity. I will never destroy you, Erica. I will protect you. I will challenge you. I will push you to be the brilliant, fierce, uncompromising woman you were always meant to be. But I will never betray you. How can you promise that? Because I've been searching for you for 4 years. Because I watched you dance and saw someone who refused to let the world make her small. Because I recognize in you what I see in myself, someone who will burn the world down before letting injustice win. I don't want to destroy that. I want to stand beside it. Erica's hands were shaking. I'm not ready. I know. Merico's voice was gentle, absolute. When you're ready, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. He stood, pressed a single kiss to her forehead, so brief and tender it made her eyes burn. Then he stepped back, giving her space, giving her time, giving her the choice that no one had given her in 4 years. Erica looked out at Rome, at the city that had witnessed empires rise and fall, at the ancient stones that had survived everything. She thought about the Fontanus, about justice, about the gray zones where right and wrong blurred into something more complicated and more true. And she thought about the man standing beside her, who'd built an empire to protect the vulnerable, who'd been searching for her because he saw in her what she'd stopped seeing in herself. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But for the first time in 4 years, she believed she could be. Thank you, she whispered. For dinner. For understanding. For waiting. Merico's smile was soft, knowing, patient. I'll always wait for you, Erica. You're worth waiting for. As she walked back down the stairs, her heart felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because she wasn't alone anymore. Heavier because she knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever was building between them would change everything. The ransomware case started simple enough. A small medical clinic in Naples, their patient records encrypted, ransom demand for 50,000 euros. Nothing Erica hadn't handled before. She'd been working on it for 6 hours when the walls started closing in. It was the medical records, specifically the pediatric files. Names, ages, diagnoses. A 7-year-old girl with leukemia. A 5-year-old boy with a congenital heart defect. Dozens of vulnerable children whose treatment plans were now locked behind encryption, inaccessible to the doctors trying to save their lives. The ransomware group had sent a message: pay within 48 hours or we delete everything. The children's clock is ticking. Erica stared at the screen, her hands trembling on the keyboard. The code was complex, military-grade encryption, designed by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She could break it. She knew she could. But it would take time, and time was something those children didn't have. Her chest tightened. Her breath came shorter. The office suddenly felt too small, the air too thin, the walls too close. She tried to focus on the code, but the numbers were blurring. Her vision was tunneling. Her heart was hammering so hard, she thought it might break through her ribs.
Not now. Not now.
She had work to do. Children were depending on her. She couldn't fall apart. She couldn't be weak. She couldn't fail again like she'd failed before when the system had taken 6 months to act and people had suffered while she waited for justice that came too slowly. The panic attack hit like a freight train. Erica pushed back from her desk, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Her hands were numb. Her legs wouldn't hold her. She collapsed to her knees on the office floor, her vision graying at the edges, her mind screaming that she was dying. She was suffocating. She was drowning in air. She crawled to the door, locked it with shaking hands.
No one could see her like this.
No one could know she was broken. She'd worked so hard to rebuild herself, to prove she was capable, to show Merico she was worth the faith he'd placed in her. She couldn't let him see her shatter. Erica curled up against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to do anything except feel the terror consuming her from the inside out. The knock on the door barely registered through the roaring in her ears. Erica. Merico's voice, calm and commanding. Open the door.
She couldn't speak.
Couldn't move. Couldn't do anything except try to remember how to breathe. Erica, I know you're in there. I know what's happening. Open the door, or I'm breaking it down. She wanted to tell him to go away. Wanted to tell him she was fine. Wanted to preserve some shred of dignity. Instead, she made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. The door exploded inward. Not picked. Not carefully opened. Shattered. The lock destroyed by pure force. And then Merico was there, dropping to his knees beside her, his hands on her face, tilting her head up so she had to look at him. Breathe with me, he said, his voice absolute and steady. In through your nose. Hold it. Out through your mouth. Stay with me, Erica. Follow my breathing. He demonstrated, slow and deliberate.
In.
Hold.
Out.
His dark eyes locked on hers, refusing to let her drift away into the panic. I can't, she gasped. The children, the case, I have to. The only thing you have to do right now is breathe. Everything else can wait. Breathe with me. He took her hand, pressed it against his chest so she could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. Feel that? That's real. I'm real. You're safe. You're here. Breathe. Slowly, agonizingly, Erica matched her breathing to his.
In.
Hold.
Out.
The gray edges of her vision started to recede. The roaring in her ears quieted to a dull rush. Her heart still hammered, but the crushing pressure on her chest began to ease. That's it, Merico murmured. You're doing it. Stay with me. They stayed like that for minutes that felt like hours. Merico kneeling beside her, his hand steady over hers, his breathing the anchor that kept her from drowning. When she could finally speak, her voice was raw and broken. "I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
The case, the children, Don't apologize." His voice was firm. "This isn't weakness, Erica. This is what happens when someone who cares too much sees suffering they can't immediately fix. I know, because I've been there." She looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "You've had panic attacks?" 3 years ago, after an ambush that killed my best friend." Merico's jaw tightened, but he held her gaze. "His name was Luca. We'd grown up together. He was my consigliere, my brother in everything but blood. We were meeting with a rival family, trying to negotiate territory disputes. Someone betrayed us. They opened fire in the middle of the meeting." His hand tightened on hers. "Luca threw himself in front of me. Took 3 bullets meant for my chest. I held him while he died, and I couldn't do anything except watch the light go out of his eyes. The man who'd been beside me my entire life, gone because I hadn't been fast enough, careful enough, smart enough to see the betrayal coming." Erica's breath caught. "Merico." For months after, I couldn't sleep, couldn't function. I'd be in meetings and suddenly I'd be back in that room, holding Luca, covered in his blood. My heart would race. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was losing my mind. His voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. The panic attacks were so severe that my doctor wanted to hospitalize me. But I couldn't show weakness. Not when I had an empire to run, people depending on me, enemies waiting for any sign I was vulnerable. What did you do? I learned that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and still getting back up. It's about admitting when you need help. It's about letting someone see you at your worst and trusting they won't use it to destroy you. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "You're not weak, Erica. You're human. And the fact that you care enough about those children to have a panic attack over their suffering, that makes you exactly the kind of person I want working beside me." Something cracked open in Erica's chest. Not breaking. Opening. Like a door she'd kept locked for 4 years finally swinging wide. "I'm terrified I'll fail them," she whispered. "Like I failed before. Like I'm always too late, too slow, not good enough." "You won't fail them. Because I'm going to help you. We're going to solve this case together. You're not alone anymore, Erica. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." The words hit her like a physical force. You're not alone anymore. For years. For years of being alone, of carrying everything, of believing she had to be strong enough to bear the weight of the entire world, or she was worthless. And here was Merico Russo, Mafia boss, dangerous man, telling her she didn't have to be strong enough. Because he would be strong for her when she couldn't be. "Thank you," she breathed. "For breaking down the door. For staying. For understanding. Always." His voice was fierce, possessive, tender. "I will always break down doors for you, Erica. I will always stay." Their faces were inches apart. His hands still cradled her face. His eyes were dark and intense and full of something that made her heart stutter for entirely different reasons. She closed the distance. The kiss was desperate and necessary and inevitable. Not gentle, not practiced. Raw and urgent and real, tasting a salt from her tears and something darker, something that felt like recognition and salvation and falling all at once. Merico made a sound low in his throat, his hands sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, became consuming, became the kind of connection that rewrites your understanding of what kissing can be. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Merico pressed his forehead to hers. Tell me you're ready, he said, his voice rough. Tell me this isn't just the panic talking. I'm terrified, Erica admitted. But I'm ready. I'm so ready, Merico. I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to be alone anymore. I want this. I want you. His smile was fierce and triumphant, and so tender it made her chest ache.
Then you have me.
All of me. For as long as you want me. That might be a very long time. Good. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, a promise and a claim all at once. Because I've been waiting 4 years for you, Erica McNeill, and I don't plan on letting you go. Later, after they'd returned to the case and broken the encryption together, after they'd recovered the medical records and sent them back to the clinic with no ransom paid, after the children were safe and the ransomware group had been reported to Merico's contacts in international law enforcement, Erica stood in Merico's arms and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Whole. Not fixed. Not healed completely. But whole enough to stand. Whole enough to fight. Whole enough to let someone see her broken pieces and trust they wouldn't cut her with them. Thank you, she whispered against his chest, for breaking down my door. Merico's arms tightened around her. I'll break down every door between us, amore mio. Every single one. And Erica believed him. The morning after the kiss, Erica woke in her own bed in the staff quarters alone. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined everything. The panic attack, Merico breaking down her door, the kiss that had rewired something fundamental in her chest. Then she saw the note slipped under her door. My office. 9 a.m. We need to talk. M. Her stomach dropped. This was it. The morning after conversation where he'd tell her it was a mistake, that they'd gotten caught up in the moment, that they needed to maintain professional boundaries. She'd heard this speech before, for years ago, from people who'd promised to stand by her and then disappeared the moment things got complicated. At 8:57, she stood outside his office door, her heart hammering. She'd worn her uniform, armor against whatever rejection was coming. Enter. Merico sat behind his desk, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his hair immaculate, every inch the powerful businessman. The man who'd held her through a panic attack and kissed her like she was oxygen felt like a dream in the harsh morning light. Sit, he said, his tone unreadable. Erica sat, her spine rigid, her hands clasped in her lap. If this is where you tell me last night was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. His voice was firm, absolute. But it was complicated. And we need to establish rules before this goes any further. Rules. Of course. Everything in Merico's world had rules, boundaries, carefully negotiated terms. She should have expected this. What kind of rules? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Merico stood, moved around the desk, leaned against it so he was closer to her, but still maintaining a professional distance. I run multiple businesses, Erica. Some legitimate, some that operate in gray zones. I have enemies who would use any perceived weakness against me. I have associates who need to see me as uncompromising and in control at all times. And I have work that requires absolute focus and discretion. I understand. Her throat was tight. You need to keep this private. Keep me hidden.
No.
The word was sharp. I need to keep you safe. There's a difference. He crouched in front of her chair, his eyes level with hers, intense and serious. What I'm about to propose isn't about hiding you, Erica. It's about protecting both of us and the work we do. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. She held his gaze. Tell me. During work hours, in professional settings, around my associates and staff, we maintain complete professionalism. No visible affection, no personal conversations, No indication that we're anything other than employer and specialist. In those moments, I'm your boss, you're my employee, and the work comes first. Always. Erica's chest tightened, but she nodded. And outside work hours? Merico's expression shifted, something dark and hungry flickering in his eyes. Outside work hours, in private, we're honest. Completely honest. About what we want, what we need, what we feel. No games, no pretense, no holding back. When that office door closes and it's just us, I'm not your boss. I'm the man who wants you more than his next breath. And you're not my employee. You're the woman I've been searching for since I watched you testify 4 years ago. Heat flooded through her. Those are very different dynamics.
Yes.
Which is why the boundaries have to be absolute. I won't blur those lines, Erica. I won't use my position to pressure you. I won't make you feel like your job depends on our personal relationship. At work, you're free to challenge me, disagree with me, push back on my decisions without any fear that it will affect what happens between us privately. And if we fight, personally, does that spill into work?
No.
We handle personal conflicts privately. We don't bring emotions into professional decisions. And if it ever becomes too complicated, if either of us feels the boundaries are being violated, we talk about it immediately. His hands covered hers, warm and steady. I need you to understand, Erica. This arrangement only works if you feel completely safe. If you ever feel pressured, uncomfortable, or like you can't be honest with me, everything stops. Your job is secure regardless of what happens between us personally. I'm putting that in writing if you need it. Erica stared at him, this dangerous man proposing rules designed entirely to protect her autonomy. You've thought about this a lot. I thought about it all night. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways I could hurt you unintentionally, all the power imbalances that exist between us. And I realized the only way this works is if we're ruthlessly honest about those imbalances and build structures to protect you from them. What about protecting you? His smile widened. I'm a grown man who runs a criminal empire, amore mio. I can protect myself. You're the one who was on her knees having a panic attack 12 hours ago. You're the one who's been hiding for 4 years. You're the one who needs to know, beyond any doubt, that I will never use my power against you. Something in Erica's chest cracked open. Not breaking. Blooming. You really mean that? Every word.
He squeezed her hands. So,
do you agree to the terms? Professional at work, honest in private, clear boundaries, open communication, and either of us can renegotiate at any time. Erica took a breath, then another. She thought about the panic attack, about Merico breaking down her door, about the kiss that had felt like coming home. She thought about 4 years of hiding, of being small, of believing she didn't deserve good things. And she thought about the man in front of her, who'd spent all night figuring out how to give her power in a relationship where he held most of it. I agree, she said. With one addition. His eyebrows rose. What addition? You have to promise that if I'm making a mistake professionally, you'll tell me. I don't want you protecting my feelings at work because of what's happening between us privately. I need to know I can trust your professional judgment even when we're personally involved. Merico's smile was slow and absolutely delighted.
Done.
Anything else? Yes. Erica stood, forcing him to rise with her. They were close now, close enough that she could feel his body heat, see the pulse in his throat. This conversation? This was work. Professional negotiation of terms. Very appropriate. Absolutely appropriate, Merico agreed, his voice dropping lower. So, if I were to leave this office right now, close the door behind me, and come back in 5 minutes, then work hours would be over. His eyes were dark, hungry, locked on her mouth. And we'd be in private time, where very different rules apply. Erica's heart was racing, but not from panic. From anticipation. From power. From the heady knowledge that this man wanted her and had built an entire structure of rules to make sure she felt safe wanting him back. "I'll see you in 5 minutes, Mr. Russo," she said formally. His laugh was low and rich. "I'll be counting every second, Miss McNeill." She left the office, closed the door, and stood in the hallway for exactly 5 minutes, her pulse pounding, her body humming with anticipation. When she opened the door again, Merico was standing by the window, his jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He turned when he heard her enter, and the look on his face made her knees weak. Not her boss. Not the dangerous Mafia don. Just a man who looked at her like she was everything he'd been searching for. "Work hours are over," Erica said softly, locking the door behind her. Finally, Merico crossed the space between them in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was nothing like the desperate, necessary kiss from last night. This one was deliberate, claiming a promise of everything they were about to begin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Merico rested his forehead against hers. "This is going to be complicated." "Everything worth having is complicated," Erica replied. "True." He kissed her again, softer this time. "But I promise you, Erica, whatever complications come, we face them together. No more hiding. No more being alone. Not anymore." And as she sank into his arms, Erica believed him. Because for the first time in 4 years, she'd found someone who saw all her broken pieces and didn't ask her to hide them. He just built structures around them to keep her safe while she healed. Their rhythm began that day. Professional and focused during work hours, passionate and honest in private. And Erica discovered that having clear boundaries didn't limit their relationship. It freed it. The Castellano file landed on Erica's desk on a Tuesday morning, 3 months into her new life. It was the thickest case file she'd seen yet, bound in red leather with Merico's personal seal embossed on the cover. She opened it in his office during work hours, their professional masks firmly in place. Merico sat across from her, his expression serious, his hands steepled under his chin. "This is different from the other cases," he said without preamble.
Bigger.
"More dangerous. And it involves people who won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets too close to the truth." Erica scanned the first page. The Castellano family, one of the oldest criminal organizations in southern Italy, with legitimate businesses serving as fronts for an extensive money laundering operation. Estimated annual wash, 200 million euros. Victims, hundreds of small business owners pressured into participating, their shops and restaurants used as cleaning stations for dirty money. "Why now?" Erica asked. "This kind of operation doesn't just appear overnight, because Marco Castellano's son, Dante, has taken over operations. He's younger, sloppier, more aggressive than his father. He's expanded too quickly, pressured too many people, left trails that his father never would have." Merico's jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, a restaurant owner named Giuseppe Ricci refused to participate. They burned down his restaurant with his entire family inside. 5 people dead, including 2 children. The file contained photos, crime scene images, a charred building, small body bags being carried out by somber paramedics. Erica's hands clenched on the file. "The authorities are investigating."
Slowly. Carefully.
"Following proper procedures, while Dante continues operating freely and more people suffer." Merico's eyes were dark, intense. "I want him stopped, Erica. I want every euro of dirty money traced back to its source. I want documentation that will bury him so deeply he never sees daylight again." And I want it done before anyone else dies. This will take time. Weeks, maybe months. I know. Which is why I'm giving you everything you need. Resources, access, protection. Whatever this requires, you have it. He leaned forward. But I need you to understand the risk. If Dante discovers what you're doing, he will come for you. And he won't be subtle about it. Erica met his gaze steadily. Then we make sure he doesn't discover it until it's too late. Merico's smile was fierce, proud. That's my girl. The investigation consumed her. Erica set up in a secure room on the estate's third floor, surrounded by monitors, encrypted servers, and enough processing power to crack any system she encountered. Merico installed additional security, personal guards, surveillance that ensured no one could approach without multiple layers of clearance. She started with the obvious, the Castellano legitimate businesses. Restaurants, import-export companies, real estate holdings, construction firms. All carefully structured, all seemingly legal on the surface. But Erica had learned long ago that the surface was where amateurs looked. The truth lived in the patterns beneath. She traced financial flows across 6 countries. Money moving from Italy to Switzerland, from Switzerland to the Cayman Islands, from the Caymans to Dubai, from Dubai back to Italy, through a dozen shell corporations with names that meant nothing and ownership structures designed to obscure rather than reveal. Each transaction left digital fingerprints, bank routing numbers, timestamps, IP addresses of computers used to authorize transfers. Most investigators would see chaos, randomness, impossible complexity. Erica saw a symphony. She worked 18-hour days, fueled by espresso. Merico personally brought her every 3 hours and a focused intensity that felt like finally using her mind the way it was meant to be used. At work, they were consummate professionals. He'd check her progress, offer insights from his own knowledge of criminal operations, ensure she ate and slept enough to function. In private, late at night when the house was quiet and the investigation files were closed, he'd hold her while she processed what she'd seen. The violence, the exploitation, the casual cruelty of men who viewed human lives as obstacles to profit. "You're carrying too much again," Merico said one night, his fingers threading through her hair. "I can see it in your eyes." 5 people, Merico. 2 children. Burned alive because their father wouldn't let criminals use his restaurant. Her voice broke. How do people become so evil? Because they stop seeing others as human. They see only assets, obstacles, tools. He tilted her face up to his. But you see them. You see Giuseppe Ricci and his family. You see every small business owner being pressured. And that's why you'll stop, Dante. Because you care, and people who care are always more dangerous than people who don't. She kissed him then, desperate and grateful. Not for passion, though that was always there between them. For understanding. For being the person who saw her breaking under the weight of caring too much and didn't tell her to care less. Week 3, she found the breakthrough. A shell corporation in Luxembourg that had been used in 17 different transactions, always as an intermediary, never as an origin or destination. Someone had been sloppy, used the same corporate officer's signature on 3 separate documents filed weeks apart. The signature was slightly different each time, not enough that a casual observer would notice. But Erica wasn't casual. She analyzed the pressure points, the stroke patterns, the microscopic variations. 3 different people had signed the same name, which meant the corporate officer didn't exist, which meant someone had created a ghost to authorize ghost transactions. She traced the IP addresses used to file the documents. They led to a law firm in Milan. Cross-referenced the firm's client list with known Castellano associates. Found a connection. The firm represented one of Dante's cousins in a real estate deal. The threads were connecting. The pattern was emerging. The symphony was building to its crescendo. By week 5, Erica had mapped the entire operation. 200 million euros flowing through 37 shell corporations across 6 countries, all ultimately controlled by 3 trusts registered in Luxembourg and managed by law firms with direct ties to the Castellano family. Every transaction documented. Every connection traced. Every participant identified. It was the most comprehensive money laundering investigation she'd ever conducted. Better than anything she'd done at TechCore. Better than anything she'd presented in court 4 years ago. She was, without question, operating at the absolute peak of her abilities. When she presented her findings to Merico, he studied the documentation for a full hour in complete silence. His expression didn't change, but she saw his jaw tighten, saw his hands clench, saw the dangerous satisfaction building behind his eyes. "This is extraordinary," he said finally. "Absolutely extraordinary, Erica. This isn't just evidence. This is a complete blueprint of their entire operation. With this, Dante doesn't just go to prison. His entire organization collapses." "It's solid," Erica confirmed. "Every connection verified, every transaction documented, every shell corporation traced to its true ownership. This will stand up to any legal scrutiny." "You're brilliant." Merico's voice was rough with pride and something deeper. "Do you understand what you've accomplished? In 5 weeks, you've done what law enforcement couldn't do in 5 years. You've built a case that will save lives, protect vulnerable people, bring down a criminal organization that's operated with impunity for decades." Erica felt the weight of it settle over her. Not crushing, empowering. "What happens now?" "Now, I deliver this to contacts in the Italian Financial Crimes Unit. Anonymously, through channels that can't be traced back to you or me. They'll investigate, verify, and within months, Dante Castellano will be arrested along with everyone in his organization." Merico moved around the desk, pulled her into his arms. "You did this, amore mio. You saved lives. You created justice. You proved that you're not just brilliant. You're indispensable." The word hit her like a physical force. Indispensable. Not just useful. Not just skilled. Essential. Necessary. Irreplaceable. For 4 years, she'd believed she was disposable. That the world could function fine without her. That her skills didn't matter. That she'd been right to hide and disappear and make herself small. But standing in Merico's arms with the evidence of her capabilities spread across multiple screens, Erica understood the truth. She wasn't disposable. She was extraordinary. And she just proved it by building a case that would dismantle an empire and save countless lives. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "For giving me this. For believing I could do it. I never doubted you for a second." Merico's arms tightened around her. "Welcome to your new life, Erica. This is who you really are. This is what you were always meant to do." And for the first time in 4 years, Erica believed him completely. She was the empire's architect, and she was just getting started. The Castellano case took 47 days to crack, and by the end, Erica had mapped a money laundering operation that spanned 6 countries, involved 12 shell corporations, and had stolen over 47 million euros from investors, pension funds, and small business owners who trusted the wrong people. It was the most complex investigation she'd ever conducted. More intricate than anything she'd done at TechCore. More challenging than the case that had destroyed her career. And she'd done it brilliantly. The evidence was spread across her 3 monitors like a digital tapestry. Transaction flows highlighted in red. Shell company connections mapped in yellow. The offshore accounts where the money had been hidden, color-coded by jurisdiction. Every thread traced, every connection documented, every dollar accounted for. Merico stood behind her chair, his hand resting on her shoulder, reading the final report she'd compiled. She could feel the tension in his body, the controlled intensity that meant he was impressed. "This is extraordinary work, Erica," he said quietly. "You've built an airtight case. The documentation alone could put 20 people in prison." 23, actually, Erica corrected, pulling up another screen. "If we include the bankers who facilitated the transfers. They knew exactly what they were doing." "Can you recover the money?" "Most of it. Maybe 42 million euros. The rest was moved through crypto exchanges that are functionally untraceable, even for me." "But 42 million euro back to the victims? That's life-changing for most of them." Merico's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Then let's make it happen." The recovery took 3 days. Merico's contacts in international finance moved with ruthless efficiency, freezing accounts, pressuring banks, leveraging connections that existed in the gray zones where legal and illegal blurred into irrelevance. Money started flowing back to victims who'd given up hope of ever seeing it again. Erica watched the transactions clear, watched pension funds get restored, watched small business owners receive notifications that their stolen capital had been returned, and felt something fierce and victorious burn in her chest. This was why she'd become a forensic analyst. Not for corporate prestige or career advancement. For this. For the moment when justice actually happened, when the vulnerable got protected, when the system that had failed them got circumvented by people willing to operate outside its broken rules. On the 4th day, at 11:47 p.m., Erica was documenting the final recoveries when the email arrived. The sender was a federal cybercrime unit address she recognized from her TechCore days. The subject line read, "Inquiry regarding recent cryptocurrency recovery operations."
Her heart stopped.
She opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Ms. McNeill, our office has become aware of several recent cryptocurrency recovery operations that bear signatures consistent with your documented analytical methods. We are conducting a routine inquiry into the legal authorization and documentation protocols used in these recoveries. Please respond within 72 hours with 1. Documentation of legal authority for account access. 2. Chain of custody records for all evidence. 3. Jurisdictional authorization for cross-border financial operations." This is a preliminary inquiry. Cooperation at this stage may prevent further investigation. Regards, Special Agent David Morrison, Federal Cybercrime Division. Erica read it 3 times, her mind racing through implications and consequences. They knew. Somehow, they'd tracked her work. Maybe the blockchain patterns were too distinctive, too similar to her old methods. Maybe one of the banks had reported the unusual account freezes. Maybe someone in the federal system had been watching for her signature analytical style and had finally found it. The evidence she'd compiled for the Castellano case was comprehensive, brilliant, and completely inadmissible in any legal proceeding because half of it had been obtained through methods that would make prosecutors weep. Unauthorized access to private financial records. Blockchain analysis that required penetrating encrypted systems. Documentation that proved crimes but couldn't be used in court without revealing how it was obtained. If she cooperated with this inquiry, she'd expose everything. Merico's operations, his contacts, the entire gray zone network that actually got results while the legal system moved at glacial speed and let criminals hide behind jurisdictional red tape. She'd also expose herself. The federal authorities would realize that Erica McNeill, the whistleblower who destroyed her career for integrity, was now working for a mafia operation and using illegal methods to achieve justice. They'd use it against her, against Merico, against everyone they'd helped. Or she could delete the email, pretend she never saw it, let the 72-hour deadline pass, and force them to escalate if they wanted answers.
By time.
Disappear again if necessary. But if she deleted it, she was making a choice. A permanent, irrevocable choice about who she was and what she believed. For years ago, she'd sacrificed everything for traditional justice, for doing things the right way, through proper channels, with legal authorization and court oversight. And it had destroyed her life while producing hollow, compromised results that let powerful people negotiate their way out of consequences. Now she had a choice: cooperate with the system that had failed her and everyone she'd tried to help, or choose the gray zones, where justice was faster and messier and legally questionable, but actually protected the vulnerable. Choose the system that had abandoned her, or choose Merico, who'd given her purpose and protection and love. Erica's cursor hovered over the delete button. She thought about the Fontanas, crying with relief when their life savings were returned. About the Naples clinic, treating children again because she'd broken ransomware encryption without waiting for legal authorization. About the 47 victims of the Castellano operation, who'd just gotten their futures back because she and Merico had bypassed every legal obstacle that would have delayed justice for years. She thought about the system that had taken 6 months to act on her TechCore evidence while more people were victimized. About the prosecutors who'd made deals with criminals. About the legal structures designed to protect the powerful while abandoning everyone else. And she thought about Merico, breaking down her door, sharing his trauma, building structures to keep her safe, telling her she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. The choice wasn't difficult. It was just permanent. Erica deleted the email. Then she cleared it from her trash folder, wiped the metadata, scrubbed any evidence it had ever existed. She sat back in her chair, her heart pounding, and waited to feel guilty. Waited to feel like she'd betrayed her principles, compromised her integrity, chosen convenience over conscience. Instead, she felt clear,
certain, free.
The door to her office opened. Merico entered, carrying 2 glasses of wine, his eyes immediately finding hers with that uncanny ability he had to read her moods. "Something happened," he said. "It wasn't a question. I got an email. Federal inquiry into my work. They wanted documentation, legal authorization, evidence protocols." Erica met his gaze steadily. "I deleted it." Merico set down the wine glasses, his expression unreadable. "Do you regret it?"
No.
The word came out firm, certain. "4 years ago, I chose the system. I believed that doing things the right way, following legal procedures, working within traditional structures, that was the only path to real justice. And it destroyed me while producing compromised, inadequate results that let criminals negotiate their punishment." She stood, moved to face him directly. "I'm done with that. I'm done believing that broken systems deserve my cooperation. I'm done watching vulnerable people suffer while lawyers argue about jurisdictional authority and prosecutors make deals with criminals. The work we do here, it's messy and complicated and legally questionable. But it actually helps people. It actually achieves justice. And I choose that. Even knowing the consequences?" Merico's voice was quiet, serious. "If they escalate, if they come looking for you, you could face charges. Unauthorized access, computer fraud, conspiracy. They could destroy you again, Erica. Let them try." Her voice was steady, fierce. "I'm not hiding anymore, Merico. I'm not shrinking myself to fit into systems that don't work. I'm not alone anymore. And I choose this work. I choose this life. I choose you." Something blazed in Merico's eyes. Pride, possessiveness, and something deeper. Something that looked like love. He crossed the space between them, his hands cupping her face. "You understand what you just did? You didn't just delete an email. You declared war on the system that destroyed you. You chose the shadows over the light." "I chose efficacy over performance," Erica corrected. "I chose protecting the vulnerable over protecting legal protocols." I chose partnership over isolation. And yes, I chose you. Over everything else, I chose you. Merico kissed her, fierce and claiming and absolutely triumphant. When he pulled back, his smile was dangerous and delighted. "Welcome to the shadows, amore mio," he whispered. "I promise you won't regret this." "I already don't," Erica said. And she meant it, because for the first time in 4 years, she wasn't choosing between her principles and her survival. She was choosing both, on her own terms, in the gray zones where real justice lived. She was done apologizing for being brilliant, done hiding from systems that feared her capabilities, done pretending that traditional ethics mattered more than actual results. Erica McNeill had finally chosen herself, and the shadows welcomed her home. Erica stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Merico's private office, watching Rome spread out beneath her like a kingdom made of light and shadow. The Castellano operation was finished. 14 million euros recovered. 17 victims compensated. 6 countries' worth of shell corporations dismantled with the kind of surgical precision that would have made her former colleagues at Helix weep with envy. And the federal cybercrime inquiry she deleted without reading? That message had never existed. Just like the woman she'd been 4 years ago, the one who believed the system rewarded integrity had never existed. Behind her, she heard Merico and his call, heard the quiet click of his phone against the desk, felt the weight of his attention settle on her like expensive fabric against bare skin. "You're thinking too much," he said. His voice was warm, edged with something that might have been concern in a man less controlled. "I can see it in your shoulders." Erica smiled without turning. "I'm thinking exactly the right amount. Regret." Now she turned. Merico sat behind his desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking like exactly what he was, a man who built empires in the spaces between legal and necessary. The desk lamp cast shadows that made his features sharper, more dangerous. More hers. "No," she said, and meant it with a certainty that would have terrified her 7 months ago. Not even a little. He studied her with those dark, assessing eyes that had first seen through her invisibility. "The federal inquiry. You didn't even hesitate." "I hesitated." Erica moved toward him, her footsteps deliberate on the antique rug. "For approximately 3 seconds. Then I remembered that the same federal system that's suddenly interested in my methods is the same one that let Helix operate for 6 years. That let the Castellano network steal from elderly victims for 18 months before someone bothered to investigate. That blacklisted me for telling the truth, while the executives who enabled it all negotiated book deals and consulting positions." She reached his desk, placed her palms flat on the polished surface, leaned forward until their faces were inches apart. "So no, Merico. I don't regret deleting that inquiry. I regret wasting 4 years believing the system would eventually recognize I'd done the right thing." Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. "You did do the right thing." "I know." Her voice was steady, absolute. "And I'm still doing it. Just not the way I was taught. Not within the constraints of institutions that value procedure over justice. Not anymore." Merico reached up, traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. The gesture was gentle, but his eyes held the kind of intensity that made her pulse hammer. "You're sure? Because once you cross this line completely, once you choose this world, there's no going back to who you were." Erica laughed, and it was nothing like the careful, quiet sound she'd made as an invisible janitor. This laugh was full. "Free. Dangerous. Merico. I crossed that line the moment I testified against Helix. I just spent 4 years pretending I could uncross it. Pretending that if I made myself small enough, invisible enough, apologetic enough, someone would eventually let me back into the legitimate world." She straightened, moved around the desk until she was standing directly in front of him. But I don't want back in. I want this. The complicated, morally ambiguous, legally questionable work that actually protects people the system abandons. He pulled her into his lap with the easy strength she'd come to crave. His hands settled on her hips with a possessiveness that should have felt controlling but instead felt like being claimed by someone who understood exactly who she was. And me. His voice dropped lower. Do you want me? Or just the work? Erica threaded her fingers through his hair, feeling the tension in his shoulders that betrayed how much her answer mattered. This man who commanded rooms with a glance, who built empires with calculated precision, who never showed vulnerability to anyone. I choose both, she said quietly. I choose the work that lets me use my skills without compromising my principles just to satisfy bureaucratic procedure. I choose the partnership with someone who sees my integrity as valuable instead of inconvenient. I choose you, Merico Russo, with complete awareness of exactly who you are and what your world demands. His grip tightened. My world is dangerous. I know. It requires operating in shadows, making decisions that look wrong on paper but are right in practice, protecting the vulnerable by methods the authorities would never approve. I know, Erica repeated, and I'm choosing it anyway. Because I'd rather be dangerously effective than safely useless. I'd rather work in the gray zones with you than spend another day pretending the black and white legal system actually delivers justice. Merico searched her face with an intensity that felt like being read at source code level, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the woman who'd spent 7 months hiding in plain sight. He wouldn't find her. She didn't exist anymore. You're not my employee, he said finally. You're my partner. In everything. Equal authority. Equal risk. Equal protection. And equal reward? Erica smiled, but her eyes were serious. Because I'm not doing this halfway. If I'm choosing the shadows, I'm choosing them completely. Equal everything. His hand slid up her back, pulled her closer until there was no space between them. You built yourself back from nothing, Erica. You reclaimed your brilliance. You proved you're not just the best digital forensics specialist I've ever seen. You're the only one with the courage to use those skills without institutional permission. I had help. Her voice softened. Someone saw me when I'd forgotten how to be visible. Someone offered me protection when I'd learned to expect punishment. Someone reminded me that integrity and effectiveness aren't mutually exclusive. They just require the courage to operate outside broken systems. Merico kissed her then, slow and thorough and claiming. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. You're seen, Erica McNeill. Protected. Desired. And you're mine. Yours, she confirmed. And you're mine. We're partners navigating the darkness together because that's where the real work happens. That's where we can actually make a difference. She pulled back slightly, met his eyes with absolute certainty. I'm not hiding anymore. Not from my past. Not from my capabilities. Not from who I am or what I choose to do with my skills. I'm Erica McNeill. I exposed corruption once and paid for it. Now I'm doing it again, but on my terms, with protection, with power, with you. With me, Merico echoed. Always. Outside the windows, Rome glittered with a million lights hiding a million secrets. Inside this room, in this partnership, Erica felt something she hadn't experienced in 4 years.
Complete. Whole. Seen.
Not despite her choices, but because of them. She'd stopped hiding, stopped apologizing, stopped pretending that the woman who danced alone in that marble hall 7 months ago was someone separate from the analyst who destroyed her career to tell the truth. They were the same person. And that person had finally found exactly where she belonged. In the gray zones. In the shadows that protected the vulnerable. In the arms of a man who valued her courage as much as her brilliance. Equal partners, she said one more time. In everything. In everything, Merico confirmed. And for the first time since the day she'd walked out of that federal courthouse 4 years ago, Erica believed her future was something worth building instead of something to simply survive. She'd chosen the complicated, dangerous, morally complex work that actually changed lives. She'd chosen the partnership that made her stronger instead of smaller. She'd chosen Merico and the empire they'd build together in the spaces where justice and law didn't always align. And she'd never felt more certain of anything in her life. So that's Erica's story. From invisible janitor dancing alone in a marble hall to equal partner in an empire built between the shadows and the light. From a woman who destroyed her career to expose corruption to someone who'd learned that real justice doesn't always operate within the boundaries of broken systems. She found someone who saw her brilliance as valuable instead of dangerous. Someone who offered protection instead of punishment. Someone who understood that integrity and effectiveness aren't opposites, they're partners, just like she and Merico became. 4 years of hiding. 7 months of invisibility. One dance that changed everything. Because sometimes being seen by the right person doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes who you're willing to become. Erica stopped apologizing for her courage. Stopped making herself small. Stopped believing that doing the right thing meant accepting the consequences the system imposed. She chose partnership over isolation. Chose effectiveness over procedural purity. Chose the man who recognized that her past wasn't a liability, it was exactly what made her invaluable. And in doing so, she built the future she'd thought she'd lost forever. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between doing what's right and what's safe? Have you ever sacrificed something important to expose the truth, only to face consequences while those responsible walked free? Or maybe you've been in a situation where the traditional path stopped making sense, where you had to forge your own way in the gray zones between what's legal and what's just. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If Erica's transformation from invisible to unstoppable resonated with you, hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories about characters who refuse to stay small, who choose dangerous partnerships over safe isolation, who understand that real power comes from being seen completely, flaws, courage, brilliance, and all. Subscribe and turn on notifications because next week, we're diving into another story about someone who thought they'd lost everything, only to discover that sometimes destruction is just preparation for the life you were always meant to claim. And if you want to support the creation of more stories like this, complex, morally ambiguous, emotionally intense narratives about people who operate in the spaces between light and shadow, check out the links in the description. Until next time, remember, being invisible might feel safe, but being seen by the right person? That's when real transformation begins. Now go out there and stop hiding.